What we did have was a possibility of creating a brand new institution with its own student numbers. Forget about the names, St Martin's, Central, Camberwell, so on and so forth. Actually, let's just create something completely new. Let's wipe the slate clean and start over again. And we took the view, and I think we were right, that each of those colleges has got its own traditions, has got its own areas of expertise. It's brought on people, sent them out into the world. But let's make sure that they manage that diversity. They manage the prospects of change in a way which keeps the traditions that they've established, but also makes them look ahead to the future, to do things new, to look for new opportunities, new areas of study and investigation and research. So I think that's what was the challenge that we had, and to a very large extent I think we were successful in keeping the names of the individual college. Even today, Central St Martin's, the London College of Fashion, they are there. Nobody's tried to replace them, but they've grown and got stronger because of the structure that they operated within and the support that they got.
And I think for an arts and design, a creative institution, university title was scary, on the one hand, and it, people kind of felt aspirational at the same time about what it could mean. I think it's been great actually for us. It's done what we needed it to do, which is, raise the status and the profile and raise the game basically. Arts and design are not for playtime. They are serious contributors to the economy and the world and the future and everything else. So yeah.
The LCC is brilliantly well placed to kind of pick up those threads and kind of mesh them together. We've got our media, it's changing rapidly. It's completely different from the days when, it was printing presses up at Fleet Street and so on, back in the 60s, if we can take that kind of long distance comparison. The way that technology is no longer, 6-cylinder Heidelbergs in the workshop plant, digital printing and, all, printing wherever you want it, and design at the heart of that. And, design's the driver, design's the force by which we can mobilise and interrogate all these things. So I think that's absolutely brilliant place for the college to be, and shouldn't lose that kind of dynamic, because I think it's very influential. And the other thing is, I think that people coming through here really need, we really need people who are coming through who are going to lead the field in that. I think it's so important in the future, and not let it happen to us. I think we need some people who are going to, take that and form it, not let technology be neutral.
Many of the students who are in industry now remember the kind of naughty bits of their journey, and they often relate to me. Now, what that says about me, I don't know. I just instinctively and with passion encourage young people. But we have done sex, drugs, rock and roll on this syllabus because we've been styling or we've been writing about it historically. The funny bits are when they say, and I'm now editor of this massive global fantastically successful website, and you know what, you remember what I did in that project, and it was a little tiny thing where you just say, come on, give that a little bit more edge. So the kind of thing that comes to mind is, when they walk around and they really didn't care less whether they had clothes on or not, whether in fact they looked particularly female or male, whether or not they were kind of making new concoctions. And you'd say, well, why are you nude? This is a project about balance, and I thought we were doing DIY makeup. And they said, oh yeah, but I'm doing this shot where I'm putting in some raspberries, and and interesting enough, it kind of is about being hybrid. and concocting mischief. And I think the world's become more mischievous because it's so worrying.
So when the UAL idea came along, it was the perfect thing because we were in the right environment. We were in an arts university, so we weren't a little blip in a much larger institution that didn't really care about arts or theatre. We were part of a university of the arts. We were able to maintain, the sort of small but perfectly formed situation that we have, and I think UAL, the decision of UAL to merge or bring the three colleges of Camberwell and Chelsea and Wimbledon under one umbrella enabled us to maintain that, but also made it very efficient for the universities to administer. And we didn't feel that we got lost. We felt we still retained our distinctiveness as Wimbledon College of Art. So that's really how the change felt.
One of the two lectures I gave, and one was about Billie Holiday, which I eventually wrote about, and the students were incredible. In fact, I've used references from that in my book, and I played them a piece of Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, and they were actually speechless at the end. Normally they were very vocal in a positive way in the lectures. And another one was showing them, I was at the time contributing to an exhibition at the V&A around fashion on paper, and I was looking at some magazines, and there was this amazing image from The Face, I think it was, and someone had spat into the camera, and I knew it had to be in the exhibition, but I just, because it was so grotesque, but it was part of this fashion feature. Anyway, so I took all these images, because I like to take the original objects in, and I took them into the students, and it blew their minds because they hadn't seen these earlier issues of the magazine. So that was bringing in my experience of the design history course, and that impact, the power of the object, really.
Each college had a number of departments. For London College of Fashion, they were design, clothing technology, hairdressing and beauty, and business, communication and cultural studies. Out of those four areas, he brought two schools together. The simple one to bring together, obviously, was design and clothing technology. And that's interesting because in many other institutions, designs over there and technologies over there, especially in fashion, and bringing it together was one of the early developments, really. It was really the only thing it could do, but it was so important. And that was quite a difficult merge, because the technologists thought the design people were way out, and the design people thought the technologists were really, dragging their feet and stuck in some way back place in the East End, which is where they were based. But when the kind of dust settled down from putting those two merging developments together, it was very successful.
You just see so many exciting, wonderful things, and you sort of get used to, I don't know, there was the student parading, naked on the corridors at Wimbledon, at CSM as part of her show. I used to sit opposite Matt Barrett, who was the infrastructure manager there, and he'd just go, "Oh God, there's boobs on the 9th floor. I've got to go." It's like, okay, well, there you go. Let's sort it out. And you become a bit immune to stuff. Actually, you become immune to the crazy sometimes. But I did have when I was at Wimbledon, and as I said, it was such a different ethos, so different to where I worked. And I had a member of staff who used to come, and we used to have a little student hatch. I'm sure you used to have one at the university when we used to open the counter to speak to them, and he'd only communicate by barking at me, and he'd come in and say woof, 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 and you'd be like, "Oh, hello." Right, it's okay. What do I do with this? And he'd pretend to be a dog for 5 minutes. So
I don't know about other colleges, but I was the very first foundation technician at Camberwell, and it had grown to 90 students It was basically run by Jim Pearson on his own. He was the full-time member of staff. And I think there were some senior lecturers in different areas, key areas, one or two. But when I turned up, he showed me this room, which looked like a building site, and said, I want this to be a workshop. And, you know, can you make it a workshop? A wood and metal workshop? You know, and this was on the first floor of Wilson's Annex. By then, the foundation had the whole of the top floor of the Wilson's Annex, which you may have seen. It's just down the road from Camberwell. And then he took me to these two kind of quite large cupboard, and he opened it, and it was just full of materials, just like they'd all been thrown in there.
The research strategy I wrote in 2015 stretches to 2022. So in a sense, it is a template for what I see the key agenda items as being, and it's quite focused on the idea that we have to escape from an late 19th, early 20th century notion of what our subject is, because a lot of the subject categorizations that we teach at the University of the Arts are themselves changing in the outside world, and we need to work with other subject areas, with other disciplines, to understand better what are the future subjects going to be. You're not going to be able to just say, oh, there's art, there's painting, there's sculpture, there's drawing, there's textile design. We do have to understand how different subject areas, particularly in the sciences and in the social sciences, are going to impact on what we do. You know, how fashion is going to relate to different ideas around health and well-being, how creative practice relates to different notions of political and social change. You know, how, as I was saying before, design thinking relates to policy development. All those intersections of what we do and what other subject areas do have to become the focus of what we're looking at. And I think at Stratford that's going to be very much the case. There's a lot of connections there between fashion and anthropology, let's say, and between different ways of thinking about how health and well-being relate to ideas of dress and image construction, you know, and things like that. So I think what we're looking at is quite an exciting future where we're able to rethink some of our subject areas at the same time as obviously we're having to rethink how we deliver some of those subject areas in a world that's much more dominated by the digital than the physical, and how we retain the good parts of both.